Everybody good with starting? Good?
Yeah,
Proceeding.
we're ready.
I'm going to read this one short quote that I liked that I found last night. It's by a man that I don't really know too much about. His name is Jon Bernie.
John who?
Bernie.
Bernie.
And the quote is, "We don't really know how letting go happens. We want to know so we can make it happen. But gradually, we find that letting go really isn't our job. Rather, our task is to learn how to let things be exactly as they are." So, with that quote, what I would like to pose to the group, or hear from the group about, is, in your life so far, how has letting go worked for you? Do you have any insights into that?
Could you say before you start, what do you mean by letting go? What we're going to
For me, letting go is basically a response to a feeling of egoic control. The ego trying to make something happen, get what it wants. And so letting go of that is that movement of surrender. But the quote, the reason I like the quote is because it kind of captures that. I'm gonna read the quote one more time for Martha.
Welcome, Martha.
And for
Welcome, Martha.
Maggie. This is the quote, Martha. "We don't really know how letting go happens. We want to know so we can make it happen. But gradually we find that letting go really isn't our job. Rather, our task is to learn how to let things be exactly as they are." It's by someone named Jon Bernie.
John Denver?
Jon Bernie.
Bernie.
I would say letting go is letting go of maybe affections from the past that aren't present, or things, possessions that I lost in an honest or foolish way. Willingly or not willingly, something might have been stolen. Or we have to let go of the attachment and work with what we have in our hands, in our presence.
What was the question?
So with that quote, the exploration is, what are your insights in your life in terms of letting go?
So, to me, that definition of just living life as it is to me a definition of letting go. That's what that means to me. Because I think one of the problems with the idea of letting go is it becomes a goal.
Yeah,
Right?
I think that's what he was trying to say.
Yeah, that's what he was trying to say, and it's something that I'm gonna get there, and I don't think you can ever get there by trying. So to me, it's just, and I guess the problem is as long as one wants things to be other than what they are, then there is no letting go. So it's. I don't know, for me, if I get up in the morning and I don't want it to be anything other than what it is, that's all I need to do, or not do.
But is there some movement that aided you in arriving at that insight?
Well, I guess finding about all the things that it wasn't. I guess at some point I realized that that wasn't going to get me anywhere. Just wanting to be different, trying to be different
Different from what?
from what it was, from what it is. You know, if to me the whole idea of I want to be a better person, I want to have a better life, I want the world, I want peace, I want this, I want that. You know, I mean, you could want all those things, but I think the solution to that is like right here, right now, not out there somewhere, not tomorrow.
I think it has a lot to do with really understanding who you are, not who you are, but who I am. Understanding yourself. And the more you really understand who you are, the less you have to dwell, or you feel the compulsion to dwell on other issues, which really you dwell on not because they are of any importance, but because you don't want to look inside at who you really are. And when you finally get to the point where you can, for whatever reason, look at who you are with clarity and understanding and non-judgmentally, then you no longer have this compulsion to look at everything else. It can just be.
When you look at who you are you looking at a whole range of time, meaning who you were when you were 2, 3, 4, all the way up to this moment? Or does it more examine who you are directly just in this moment?
I understand what you're asking, but that's not really what I'm saying. So I must not have said it clearly. What I'm trying to express is the idea of comprehending not what the experience of your life has been, or how you've changed over time, or how events during your life have affected you or changed you, but rather how what your inherent Martha-ness is, okay? And while that person or that entity may have changed over time, I see it as all one thing, one entity. Whether at the age of 2, or at the age of 62, or at the age, should I last that long, of 82. What's difficult is there obviously are good things and bad things, and it's hard for us to look at ourselves non-judgmentally so that we can look at things that we would normally consider negative. But we have to learn to put that judgmental aspect of ourselves aside to look at ourselves non-judgmentally, which I know sounds like a paradox, but once we learn to do that and actually understand who we are, then there's no longer a need or a drive to keep looking at all these other issues in the world. We can then just accept what is in the world without hiding behind that issue because we don't want to deal with our issues.
Makes sense.
I think if I understand what you're asking, for me it's a matter of letting go of your mooring posts, everything that you think you're so familiar with yourself, and finding a new identity, or finding yourself outside of your usual patterns, and by doing that, forming this a self-discovery ritual. in the Ring of Fire series by the Blair Brothers, and they're sort of these anthropologists that went all over the South Pacific, and they chased after this tribe of nomadic people. I think they're called the Penang, the Penang, the wanderers of Indonesia, and they were real hard to find the tribe, and so they got some local people to help them. But even the local people guiding them could not find the Penang people. But nobody really cared anymore because it was all such a big adventure of getting outside of that comfort zone and getting into unknown territory by losing all those familiar mooring posts I was talking about. And so by doing
What is that word you're saying?
mooring posts, that's what you're most familiar with. You're tied to.
Mooring posts?
Yeah.
Okay, never heard that.
Yeah. And so it didn't matter that they couldn't find, although I think they eventually did find the Penang people. It just, they opened themselves, and the guides too that tried to help them, they opened themselves up to happenstance and discovery and sort of this magical existence outside of the known world. They were definitely way off the map in another place and another time, it seemed like, for them.
So is that kind of like they got so involved in just living and being in the adventure and the discovery that the act of trying to reach a conclusion that's kind of a more mental-oriented act just vanished or disappeared?
Exactly. It was just, they were taken over by the journey and not by their destination that they thought they wanted to find.
So that would be a type of letting go of the need to arrive anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you, Doc?
Well, I'm sitting here thinking, I can only let go if I think that I'm holding on. And I notice that who I am is that presence in which everything is going on. It's all going on anyway. And ultimately, it has nothing to do with my historical identity, Jon Nasse. It's just, in my consciousness, this is all going on. It's all happening delightfully. And taking responsibility for one individual showing up is kind of a game. It doesn't carry any significance other than to continue the conversation. Does that address the issue at all?
Yeah, I think it does, because you said it from the beginning, you would only have to examine letting go if you felt that there was some holding on. But also, like I asked Peter, can you give some more insights as to how that came about? Because you probably weren't, perceiving that when you were 15, maybe 20. At some point, that came into focus, and it's a little different than how
It came
used to be.
about as my recognition that everything else is bullshit. It only took 85 years to do it. But gradually, as my brain deteriorated, it was hard to hold on to the past and future anyway. I delighted in discovering that there's nothing to hold on to anyway. So there's probably a cop-out.
Or maybe it's wisdom. Maybe that's what wisdom is.
Yeah, well, I'm still willing to do the dishes.
There's no harm in that.
Hmm?
There's no harm in that.
Thank you.
Some say, religious people may say, let go, let God.
Yeah.
Let go, let this higher power pull me along.
Go get on the subject.
A carpenter would have a lot of problems with that.
More about the higher power. What's this higher power business?
Well,
More bullshit.
I'm a powerhouse.
Are you
But-
higher?
No,
Well, you're higher than me.
very minute in the face of society. There are many stronger, many smarter, many taller, many wiser, many richer. But essentially, we are the travelers through time and space. And even when I was born, I kind of remember being there. I remember being in the womb of my mom and how it was a packed situation. And I remember the birth time going out, and it was very difficult for a few moments. And I lived in that moment, so why I didn't live for a long time before, too. And I shall live, even though the body may fall apart, just as it has come together. As I came out, it was breast milk for years. I remember that, too. And
The higher power thing.
yeah, the higher power is the thing that lets you digest food and all that. Without that power there, without any consciousness present, the body would begin to deteriorate and would be decided to be dead. I mean, said to be dead. And it is. I've heard that even the body now, it's not alive, but it's dead. Only I am experiencing it, the consciousness of it, and by my desire, I can stand up and slap my knee.
And that when you refer to what are you referring to?
Everything around me, like my nose, my eyes, my brain, my heart. But I can't say my soul or my conscious self. I can say that is the observer. Like, oh, I hurt my nail and it really hurts.
Can you feel comfortable calling yourself the higher power?
I can see myself as a part and parcel or spark of the higher power. Just like we can say we're hot, but the sun's hot. And we could say sunlight is feeling hot on us, but that's even very minute, little far away heat from the sun. So we can imagine the sun has and all the little atoms of light within the beings. They are minute, but they're very dependent upon the sun. They're connected to the sun. So in that way, I'm a spark of the higher power, I dare say.
Do you have any insights as to how you arrived at the letting go and letting God?
Uh-huh. I said some say for that. But I'll think about that for a second. Yeah. Nothing can save you. You know, people have tried to survive and they're saying, we'll try it all we can in the hospital, but finally he left. And through history, many people have tried to continue their projects, but they were forced by time that old age, disease, and death took them to a new life, to a new body. Life goes on. So,
Well, that response, I'm kind of looking more for in your life.
You know, I've been walking into that corner, banging my head against the wall, trying to figure that out. And all of a sudden you realize all I have to do is turn away from the corner and boom, there's where I need to go. Okay? And you don't, right? But sometimes you can have a friend and you know, somebody you feel real comfortable with and you just talk and you just whatever and it kind of comes together. You know, you work with a professional, which I've done, and that person helps you get over a road bump. Or, you know, I'm a person who just happens to read a lot. That's just something I'm very comfortable doing. I read tons of books about all sorts of different things. But I found a lot of insight in a lot of books, and a lot of them are not strictly scientific type books. A lot of them are just fiction. But I read about characters who have different personalities, and I think, oh, that's interesting. Wait a minute. Is that interesting to me because that is an issue that involves me? And that gives me a lot to think about. I go on a hike and think. You know, I just think. And, you know, it's just all aspects of your life. If you're willing to kind of open up to yourself and be willing to think about those things. But I think a lot of people do things like get involved in daily stuff, drink, do drugs, whatever, to avoid thinking about those issues. And you know, it's easy to do that. You know, it's easy to get involved in a 60-hour. I mean, I was a workaholic, and being a workaholic is a really good way to hide from those issues because your brain is always absorbed in your work. So you can hide. And I think people do those things in order to avoid thinking about what should be going on in their head, or it's boiling in the back of their head, but they don't want to look at it.
How do you decide what should be in the back of your head?
Well, my point is that it's there. You just aren't looking at it. You know, you're finding other things to fill the alert part of your brain, okay, or dumb it down with alcohol or drugs or whatever, okay, to prevent yourself from facing what's really there. Because what you really need to do is let go of all that stuff so that your mind is, you know, and I guess this is what meditation does for a lot of people. I'm not a meditator. I can't do that. It just doesn't work for me. But walking works for me. Hiking works for me. That settles my mind and lets me think. And it lets that stuff come forward so I can really look at it. But, you know, then I put it in context with what other information I get from friends, from books, from things like this.
But you say what is really there. And that phrase of what is really there. What do you mean by what is really there?
I mean, issues that really are issues about Martha that concern who Martha really is.
But is that who Martha is at this moment? Or are you worrying about who Martha was yesterday or the day before?
No, I'm worrying about who Martha really fundamentally is. Okay, I used to think about Martha as an attorney. Okay, and my definition for most of my life was Martha dash attorney dash at dash law. That was my name. That was my identity.
So you label yourself by your profession.
Yeah. Okay, and that's a classic example of how people look at themselves without ever looking at who they really are. Okay, they label themselves as their profession, all right? They don't have any idea of who they really are except what their profession is. And it took me a long time, you know, I mean, I basically went through withdrawal from not being an attorney. I didn't know who I was. And I had to, not reformulate, I had to find a personality that wasn't an attorney. And that was not an easy thing to do.
We're glad you did.
Well, so am I. I have no idea how happy I am. Much, much happier than I was as an attorney. And I knew that was there. It just, digging it out was very difficult. But it's possible.
What is the label you label yourself at the moment?
Martha.
Just your name.
Yeah, just who I am. And it's it was always there. It was just buried under the attorney part of me. So, and I think everybody does that. Everybody finds a way to not face who they really are. I'm not done doing it.
Does it, this is the everybody, not what you, but like wasn't, does it matter if we let something go? Is there an actual consequence, or is there an actual thing? Like, and is there actually something we're holding on to that's real? Like,
One sec, the question, Frank, was insights into letting go that we've had in life. Letting things go. Okay. Giving up that.
But I think the second
struggle.
half is just as important.
I'll read, there was a quote that came with it that I read, so I'll read it just so you know. We don't really know how letting go happens. We want to know so we can make it happen. But gradually we find that letting go really isn't our job. Rather, our task is to learn how to let things be exactly as they are.
Including holding on.
Yeah, so we've been talking this whole meeting about kind of the catch-22 or the paradox of how the idea of letting go forcefully is kind of a contradiction of terms, because it'd be like Martha said, relax. Like, you can't relax if you're trying to relax.
You can be forced to relax.
So, you know, with that quote in mind, we've been discussing our own insights in our life experience of how letting go has happened and what it means. So then now we're brought up to the present.
Good.
We haven't heard from Fred yet, or Ed, or Eric.
I don't know whether you would like to hear from me, because I think it's all a bunch of poppycock to begin with. Because I've heard the metaphysical, mystifying football of ego and egoless states kicked around so many times by so many people in so many books, and in so many situations, in so many investigations within my own mind. And I think that that's the main problem right there. How do we create either a society or an environment or condition consciousness that becomes in such conflict with itself and so much turmoil? It has to build a big metaphysical, mystifying, problematic investigation to solve it when there wasn't anything to solve to begin with. So that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
So that fits into the kind of the paradox of it. Right?
Well, that just keeps the paradox from taking place.
It should never happen in the first place.
That's something. We were not born with an ego. We develop it for a purpose. And I was brought up that if you have a healthy, well-balanced, integrated ego that has skills that it can exercise, and it gets you rewards, and it produces things in the world that are satisfying for the people that you're around, and your family, and your loved ones, and your friends, and yourself, what the hell's the problem with an ego?
Was that before or after you found yourself living here that you came to that conclusion?
What's that? Before what or what?
I said, was that before or after you found yourself living in this house?
Oh, much longer before here. That doesn't mean that it saved me from falling into turmoil because of my anxiety or my insecurities or my experiences in the world. Because it's I have two major mentors in my life, and one of them was Frederick Pearls, a Gestaltist. And it's like, who's doing it if you're not? Okay? And what's this it you're talking about? Can you point it out to me?
Can you hold it? Does it have substance?
The egoless state is part of being human. But to romantically or to idealistically make it a goal to obtain. See? But if it's a realistic school that's through tradition and heritage, has proved itself to be very useful for people, as long as it's useful for that person, great. If it isn't, change schools, change your skill, change your, if you can, if you speak up about it.
We're covered by earth, water, fire, air, ether.
And heart. With
My-
your powers
yeah.
combined, I am Captain Planet.
Well, that goes back to we were talking about pretense and stuff. You can make a living out of that.
Mind
What's that from?
greater
Captain
than
Planet. What do you...
Captain Planet. A good character.
Yeah, right.
Attempting to be free. He wants to let go. Somebody like Captain Planet or Superman. Anyway, the ego comes after the mind and then the intelligent aspect. And the ego, if it's true, that's where we're satisfied. If we have false ego, it causes us problems. But if I'm an eternal happy spirit, that's true ego. So maybe it's not that ego itself is something we must get rid of, but we must purify the ego.
Eric wants to say something.
No, it's really not.